We now move to question time, and I call Senator Birmingham.
Thanks. Thank you, President. President, my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Has the government received advice or modelling
Senator Birmingham, I'm sorry. Please resume your seat. Order! Order! Senator Wong.
President, I would draw to your attention that Senator Henderson was interjecting on her own leader quite loudly. Obviously there was a response to that, but it did begin very clearly with Senator Henderson's very loud interjections on her leader.
That is why I called Senator Birmingham, hoping that his mere presence would call his side to order. I'm going to start question time again, Senator Birmingham, and invite you to begin again. So please begin your question again.
Thank you, President. President, my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Has the government received advice or modelling that guarantees the Albanese Labor government's decision to redirect future fund investments will deliver the same financial returns had it been preserved as a purely apolitical sovereign wealth fund with a sector-neutral investment mandate, as it has been for the past 20 years?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Wong.
Thank you. First, I would say to Senator Birmingham directly that the benchmark return rate of the fund will remain at between 4% and 5% above CPI per year over the long term, and that there is no change to the expected risk profile. But I do want to ask the opposition what their problem is with investing in national priorities. You have to ask why is the coalition so worried about investing in national priorities? What is wrong with making sure that priorities such as increasing the supply of residential housing, supporting the energy transition and delivering improved infrastructure, including economic resilience and security infrastructure, what is the public policy problem with that? It says something about the coalition, doesn't it, that they're seeking to drum up fear and loathing over housing, again, over infrastructure and over the energy transition. We have been very clear, the Treasurer and the Finance Minister as the ministers responsible for this, I have been very clear that these changes in the new investment mandate are about maximising the fund's role in a changing economy, ensuring that has regard to national priorities, but making sure that the future fund will still be about maximising returns. It will still be about maximising returns. It's just that these important national priorities will be part of their investment considerations. And the senator knows that because he was the finance minister, and he knows that this is about the same argument that the coalition have against governments or anybody else doing anything about housing. I mean, it's the same position that they've had for a number of months now, when they've teamed up with the Greens to stop any additional supply as a result
Senator Wong.
of housing legislation.
Expired. Senator Birmingham, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. For clarity, Minister, is the Future Fund and the government's objectives for it purely about maximising returns first, or are you seeking to redirect Future Fund investments to the government's priorities rather than focusing on achieving that maximising of investment first and foremost?
Minister Wong.
I wonder if I'm happy to answer the question, Senator Hume, and I wonder if you've actually read what was released today, because what is the Finance Minister and the Treasurer have been very clear about a new investment mandate, very clear about a new investment mandate. It is clear that the fund is still about maximising returns, but these important national priorities will be part of their investment considerations. That is not a difficult proposition. It appears to be for the opposition, though, who are allergic to investment that might actually drive national priorities such as residential housing, and infrastructure that increases our economic and national security resilience. One would have thought that these were things, President, that would have had bipartisan support, but we know, of course, that the opposition will always want to play the game of aggression and opposition and not actually deal with the proposition on the table.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Birmingham, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, if these priorities of the government's will maximise returns, then wouldn't the Future Fund have delivered them anyway under its previous mandate? What is the point of the change in the mandate if it is going to continue to maximise returns as you argued?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Wong.
First, the independent investment decision-making of the Future Fund will continue. That's the first point. They're a very big investor, as you know, Senator. But I'm interested in this second sub because the first two were, this is a dreadful thing, and then the third is, but it won't make any difference. But it won't make any difference. I mean, the reality is, Senator Birmingham, if you go out there and say to Australians, you know, we've got an independent fund, it will make its decisions independently, but we think it should consider these national priorities in making those investment decisions, and those national priorities are residential housing. What do you think people are going to say? Do you really think people are going to say this is such a dreadful idea, Senator Birmingham? That appears to be the position of the coalition, and yet again we see that the coalition, when it comes to the economy, reckless opposition, not an opposition that's up to responsible management of the economy.
Has expired. Senator Ciccone.
Thanks very much, President, and happy Thursday. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator McAllister. We know Australian families have been experiencing cost of living pressures, and in part from the rising energy prices that Labor inherited from the previous Liberal and National government. Now, Minister, how is the Albanese government's commitment to tackling energy price pressures, such as providing every single Australian household a $300 rebate on their bill, helping these Australian households?
Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. Well, we do know that Australians are working hard right now. They're working hard to keep their budgets on track, and some Australians are doing it tough. And what it means is that every little bit counts. And it is why our government's #1 priority is helping Australians with cost of living challenges. And so over the last few weeks, many Australian families will have received an electricity bill, and every single one of those bills will be cheaper as a consequence of this government's energy price relief policies. More than 10.7 million Australian households have now received a Commonwealth rebate on their energy bills. More than 1 million small businesses have also received a rebate. It is part of a $3.49 billion investment by the Albanese government, and the most recent inflation data from the ABS showed that the government's rebates are having a direct impact on bills and on inflation. So according to the ABS, electricity prices have fallen 12.3% since June 2023. And without Labor's Energy Bill Relief Fund, electricity prices would have increased 15.4% in that same period. And this means more money in the pockets of Australian families. Our government's energy bill relief supports the investments we're making in the longer term to put downward pressure on energy prices. On the 30th of October, we hit the highest renewable penetration recorded at nearly 75%. It was the third record broken in quick succession. South Australia and Tasmania already regularly meet more than 100% of their operational electricity demand from renewables. Labor is supporting the build-out of firmed renewables, and that is because they are the lowest cost form of new generation.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ciccone, first supplementary.
Thanks very much, President, and thank you, Minister, for that answer. And I do note that it is almost 2 years since the Liberals and Nationals voted in this place, the very chamber, against the government's plan to deliver energy relief for millions of Australians, including pensioners, veterans and many low-income families. Now, Minister, what further steps has the government taken to put downward pressure on power prices during this time?
Minister McAllister.
Well, thank you, President. And Senator Coney is right to remember that in 2022 the Coalition voted against energy bill relief for pensioners, low-income families, veterans and some of our most vulnerable households.
Senator
They opposed
Colbeck.
our plan.
Please continue. Senator Colbeck, it's not like you to be so vocal, but I've called you a lot this week, and I'm asking you to listen in silence. Minister McAllister.
Well, senators will also recall.
Can I get a cup of tea?
Next thing you want another 6
Order.
It's that aged care legislation.
I've called the minister. Minister McAllister.
Well, senators will also recall that they opposed our plan. Those opposite opposed our plan to cap coal and gas prices. Well, wholesale electricity prices are currently around $48, and that is less than a fifth of the $286 they were when the Coalition left office. And one of the most important interventions that our government is making is actually restoring certainty and policy predictability to the energy market after a decade of division and disunity. Well, recently we've seen more evidence of the disunity, with Senator Canavan saying net zero is dead, the member for Hinkler calling for the Coalition to reconsider policies around net zero.
Thank you, Minister.
It's back to the future with this
Time
one.
has expired. Senator Giacone, second supplementary.
Thank you very much again, President. Now, according to many Australian energy experts like EMO and CSIRO, firmed renewables are the cheapest form of energy and put downward pressure on prices.
Order.
Minister, what is the impact of different electricity generation technologies on power prices and the reliability for households?
Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President. Well, the senator is correct. CSIRO's Gen Cost report confirmed that firmed renewables continue to be the lowest cost of new generation and nuclear power, which is proposed by those opposite, is one of the most expensive. An independent analysis from IEFA shows that nuclear could add an average of $1,200 a year to a four-person household's bills. Now, one of the very big questions that those opposite are yet to answer is how they would ensure that affordable and reliable energy was available during the decades that it would take to build taxpayer-funded nuclear power plants.
Order.
Well, as the chair of the AER explained to a House committee a few weeks ago, nuclear can't really fill the role of coal. Coal can't last until you'd have nuclear power available. And she went on to say, we see the reluctance of coal-fired generators to offer contracts now because they're worried about the reliability of their
Thank you,
own
Minister. Senator Hume.
Madam President, my question is to the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. The announcement this morning that the government will break bipartisan consensus on the Future Fund and direct it to invest in the government's political agenda is gravely concerning. Former chair of the Future Fund, David Murray, said that this change will lead to boondoggle budgeting. Why is the Albanese government robbing Australia's sovereign wealth fund to prop up Labor's priorities, which just so happen to align with the policy areas in which you are failing?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President. And it does seem that this change to the investment mandate has really exercised those opposite. A statement of expectations that hadn't been updated in 15 years and a new investment mandate.
Order! Order! Minister Gallagher, please resume your seat. Senator, order! 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 Minister Gallagher, please continue.
Thank you. So I don't agree with the comments from Mr Murray. And I would say that it is, to me, astounding that the Liberal Party, the opposition, does not believe that housing is an important national priority. They see that as something partisan. That housing, because this is what it says, increasing the supply of residential housing in Australia. Not very political. I would have thought that is something that you would believe is a national priority. supporting the energy transition. Well, maybe. We know you don't believe in climate science. We know you don't believe in net zero, so perhaps. And then delivering improved infrastructure, including economic resilience and security infrastructure. So we've included those as areas for the Future Fund to consider in its investment decision. But of course, as our leader has explained, there is no changes to the rate of return. We do expect the Future Fund to maximise return, but where they are making decisions, and those decisions are between opportunities for the Future Fund are similar, we believe that it is responsible to consider those national priorities. It's as simple as that. That's all that's changed.
Thank you, Minister. The time
Nothing
for
else.
answering has expired. Senator Hume, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. By politicising the Future Fund and its investment activities, Labor has opened up the door to putting any political agenda into the fund's investment mandate. Will the government rule out directing the Future Fund to divest from any asset classes or investments?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
As you can see, the decision today is about areas where the Future Fund is making investments, and it is. I strongly don't believe, as you have put it, that this is politicisation of the Future Fund. Like, what a load of rubbish! What a load of rubbish! So something that was established 2 decades ago can never, ever be changed under any circumstances. How ridiculous is that? Why have an investment mandate? Why have a statement of expectations? Why do they exist? They exist so that shareholders can update, if they choose, and provide further advice or information to—
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Birmingham.
President, point of order on direct relevance. Senator Hume's question was specifically about divestment. Senator Gallagher has come nowhere close to questions of whether the government would direct them to divest.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. And, the question also included politicising the fund, but I'll remind the Minister of the narrowness of the question, but I do believe she's being relevant. Minister.
The changes that have been outlined in the investment mandate and the statement of expectations are about where the Future Fund is considering investments. It's not about divestment. That is not covered in any way in the changes that have been made
the time
to
for
date.
answering has expired. Senator Hume, second supplementary.
Madam President, if the Future Fund does not invest in Labor's political policies following your interference, can the government rule out further direction to the Future Fund to force them to invest in your priorities?
Thank you. Minister Wong.
President, I think she's perfectly capable of it.
Oh, order. I've got the minister on her feet. Order. Minister Wong.
Generally, I don't ask you to rule on hypothetical questions, but that was an entirely hypothetical question. From the beginning goes if, and then a set of propositions, neither of which are factual. So I would say to you it actually does infringe the standing order.
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, President. On the point of order, the question goes to the intent of government policy, as has been announced in the last 24 hours, and the consequences if that intent of the government policy is not actually achieved. It's perfectly reasonable to be asking the government and the minister a question about the consequences if their publicly stated intentions are not met.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. I'll just seek the advice of the clerk. I am advised that the clerk believes the question to be in order because it does talk about the broad consequences of the fund. So, thank you, Minister.
Thank you. And I think it is important, because there were so many ifs in that, to be really clear about what the government has announced today. The government remains committed to the Future Fund's independence and its commercial focus. There are no changes being proposed here to the existing benchmark rate of return or the risk profile. The government will not be directing specific investments being made by the fund. The fund and its board will continue to make its decisions about investments independently, and its primary objective will be to maximise returns.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Barbara Pocock.
Question is to the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. Unlike those opposite, it's good to see the government nudging the Future Fund investment mandate towards public good, public money for public good. However, nothing is being done to get investment out of destructive industries. Private investment funds increasingly face member criticism for making investments in fossil fuel companies that contradict their own net zero targets. Our $230 billion sovereign fund invests billions in Australia's biggest fossil fuel companies. The science is clear. We cannot keep expanding coal and gas if we want to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees. The Future Fund has a clearly stated purpose to invest for the benefit of future generations. Minister, when will your government direct the Future Fund to stop investing in fossil fuels which are wrecking the future of our kids?
Thank you. Order. 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 Minister, I haven't called you yet. I'm waiting for order across the chamber. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. I thank Senator Pocock for the question. That is not any part of the changes that we have made through the investment mandate or the statement of expectations. We are not including any changes about any restrictions further than what exists now. In relation to investments in the Future Fund. We believe that the independence of the Future Fund should be maintained, that the board needs to make those decisions based on investment advice, including the rates of return. They obviously have a responsibility to report, and we've made some changes there to increase reporting about particular investments in a way that provides more information to the public. And I would say that the Future Fund is one of Australia's biggest investors in renewable energy already, and we believe that setting out these new areas for the Future Fund Board of Guardians to consider when they're making decisions is an important change to the current arrangements, and will strengthen the role and future of the Future Fund.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Investment exclusions are not new for the Future Fund. It is not sector neutral. In 2013, under pressure from the Greens, the Future Fund made the decision not to invest in tobacco because of the harm it causes. It doesn't invest in cluster munitions, and thank heavens for that. Coal and gas are the tobacco of today. Your government is pushing the fund to invest in social goods, housing, renewables, infrastructure. Why stop there? We need to stop bad investments too. How can you justify not directing the fund to divest from fossil
Senator
fuels?
Pocock. Time for asking has expired. Order. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. The Future Fund, as Senator Pocock outlines, has an exclusions list under its ESG risk management policy, but investment decisions of the Future Fund are made by the Future Fund Board of Guardians independently from government in accordance with the fund's investment mandate. And under the Future Fund Act of 2006, the responsible ministers must not give directions to the Future Fund to invest in a particular financial asset. So we are not making any changes to that, Senator Pocock. Our focus has been on increased transparency and information about the investments the Future Fund has, increased reporting against that ESG framework, and now just providing 3 national areas of priority for the Future Fund to consider when they are making their investments, mindful that no change has been made to the rate of the return or risk profile for the Future Fund.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock, second supplementary.
Minister, in 2023, your government signed up to the Glasgow Statement, which requires you to, quote, end new direct public support for the international unabated fossil fuel energy sector within 1 year. Instead, the Future Fund has increased by 11% in just 6 months its investment in Santos, Woodside and Whitehaven, 3 of Australia's biggest fossil fuel companies. Minister, will the government honour this agreement you've signed and end new Future Fund investments in fossil fuels, which are growing?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Gallagher.
Well, yes, and we do not direct the Future Fund in the investment decisions it makes. It is an independent board of guardians that make those decisions. We provide some guidance through the investment mandate and the statement of expectations, which has been modestly amended, despite the hysteria from those opposite, to include housing, the energy transition and the resilience of our national infrastructure as priority areas for the fund to consider. How outrageous is that?
Thank you, Minister. Senator Darmingham.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Gallagher. Australia marked the 40th anniversary of Medicare this year, 40 years of healthcare for all Australians. Labor will always protect Medicare because we believe healthcare is a right, not a privilege. Labor created Medicare to achieve this aim, and since the last election, the Albanese Labor government has worked hard to rebuild Medicare after a decade of neglect by the Liberals and Nationals. Minister, why is the government committed to rebuilding Medicare, and how are the government's Medicare reforms assisting Australians with cost of living pressures?
Thank you, Senator Darmingham. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, and I thank Senator Darmingham for the question and for her ongoing interest and advocacy around the importance of Medicare and the role of public health more broadly across the Australian community and how important that is. Since coming to government under the leadership of the Minister for Health, Mr Butler, the Albanese government has been working hard to strengthen Medicare. We inherited a system that was under enormous pressure and was failing, with all of the data showing that bulk billing in particular was declining, that people's access to primary care was getting harder and more expensive, and that medicines were getting too expensive. And so those have been the areas that we have focused on in our first 2 years. Of course, there's been the largest investment into Medicare in its 40-year history was our investment in the 2023 budget to strengthen Medicare with the tripling the bulk billing incentive. And that bulk billing incentive, that investment, has provided an additional 5.4 million visits, bulk billed visits across the country just since we've put that in place. We have also seen the success of the Medicare urgent care clinics. We said we would establish 50 urgent care clinics at the election. We actually delivered 58, and we have announced an additional 29 to take our commitment to 87 free urgent care clinics, and we know how popular they are. As of last week, we've had 900,000 visits to urgent care clinics across the country, almost 1 million visits to urgent care clinics across the country, and half of these patients said they would have otherwise gone to the emergency department. And do you know that all that people need to attend those urgent care clinics is a Medicare card?
Thank you, Minister. Senator Darmingham, first supplementary.
The Albanese Labor government has invested more in bulk billing than the Liberals and Nationals did in their entire decade in government. The investment has seen an estimated 5.4 million bulk billed GP visits. By increasing bulk billing rates, we are ensuring healthcare is free for more Australians.
Order.
Minister, why does the government value free healthcare?
Thank you. Senator McKenzie. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. Well, bulk billing has increased in every state and territory since we came to government. 5.4 million additional bulk billed visits. And we know that by reducing the cost of healthcare for Australian families, we limit the barriers to getting the care they need and reap the benefits.
Minister Gallagher, please resume. Senator Wong.
Continues to interject and continues to disregard your calling her to order.
That's correct. Senator Wong. Senator Ruston.
Maybe the minister might like actually to...
Senator Ruston, please resume your seat. Seriously. Senator Ruston, resume your seat. Senator Ruston, resume your seat. Honestly, I called you out for interjecting and you kept on, and then you thought you'd do a little stunt and stand up and continue. Minister Gallagher, please continue. Order. Order. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. And the difference between us, President, invest in Medicare, invest in bulk billing, invest in urgent care clinics, and those opposite, where they wind back indexation, they freeze rates, they try to introduce a GP tax. We'll never forget that. Who was that? Oh, it might have been Mr Dutton when he was last in charge. And then, of course, we've got Susan Lee from the other place, the Deputy Opposition Leader, now belling the cat and saying that charging for services is a core tenet of the Liberal Party, and that if you don't pay for it, you don't value it. Well, us over here believe in universal access
thank you,
to
Minister.
free health
The time
care.
for answering has expired. Senator Darmanin, second supplementary.
It is clear that the Albanese Labor government's reforms to Medicare are assisting Australians across the country. We're rebuilding Medicare so that Australians can live happy and healthy lives. Minister, does Medicare face any challenges to this rebuilding process?
Minister Gallagher.
Yep, they certainly do, Senator Darmanin. The challenge faced by Medicare is the election of a Dutton coalition government, because we know what they did last time. We don't have to imagine. We saw it. We'll tax GP visits, freeze funding, decimate the health system, withdraw money from the hospital system. They've done it before, they'll do it again. We know Senator Ruston herself, in her own words, has said Medicare is unsustainable. The coalition will say that bulk billing rates were higher under them, but what they aren't saying is that that was due to an inflated number with COVID vaccinations. Bulk billing was in free fall when we came to government after a decade of neglect. It faced serious challenges with Medicare due to mismanagement of those opposite.
Minister Wong.
Well, President,
Order.
on the point of order relevance.
I'm sorry, Senator Wong. Please resume your seat. Order. Senator Birmingham, order. Order. Minister Wong.
People may not like the answer, but that doesn't give senators the right to just persistently interject after you have called.
Thank you, Minister Wong. I quite agree, and I will continue to call all senators to order. Thank you. The minister has 10 seconds left. Minister.
The biggest challenge facing Australians on this would...
I have asked for order, and I will ask for order again. The minister has the right to be heard in silence. Minister Gallagher.
The biggest risk facing Australians when it comes to their access to healthcare services is the Leader of the Opposition, Mr Peter Dutton.
Thank you. When you are silent. Senator Ruston, you can either leave the chamber or listen in silence. That's the choice. Senator Tyrrell.
Thank you, President. Appreciate your time. My question is for Senator Watt, representing the Minister for Education, regarding the Wage Justice for Early Childhood Education and Care Workers, Special Account Bill 2024. If passed, there will be a wage increase for childcare professionals through a worker retention payment with a wage increase above the modern award rates over 2 years. Providers opt in by applying for the payment. The cut-off for application falls at the end of this month. Not every childcare centre will be applying for this grant, for a variety of reasons, but I'd like to know how many of the country's almost 9,000 childcare centres have so far applied for this grant.
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Tyrrell, for your interest in this matter. I take it from what you've said that you're supportive of what the government is doing, and that's very welcome to see. I'm sure that you, like all of us on this side of the chamber, agree that our early childhood education and care workers have been grossly undervalued in their pay rates over many years. They obviously perform incredibly important work for families, for children and for our economy as a whole because of the important education and learning that they impart on our kids from a very early age. And that is why our government has agreed to a 15% wage rise over 2 years for early childhood and education workers across the country. As you've indicated, over the last couple of months, a number of departments, including mine and the Department of Education that I represent here, have been working with employers and employer groups about the implementation of this policy. There has been some excellent progress made around the industrial arrangements that need to be reached in order to qualify for this worker retention payment, but I'd certainly be happy to talk further with you about any concerns that you're receiving from any employers who are finding that process difficult.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Tyrrell, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. So nobody's applied yet. Thank you. The government's funding commitment towards this is only for 2 years. Some of the enterprise agreements or other arrangements negotiated go beyond 2 years. So providers will be agreeing to wage increases without any certainty on how they will be funded in the future. Does the government think that the short-term incentive on offer is enough to recruit and retain childcare workers?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Tyrrell, and I wouldn't interpret my previous answer as saying that none have applied. As I say, there has been a lot of work undertaken with employers, employer groups and relevant unions around introducing this policy and making sure that it works properly. We are confident that on the basis of the agreement that's been reached with a wide range of employers in the sector, that the settlement of this and the implementation arrangements will work and will give employers the confidence to be able to pay their workers that worker retention payment that the government is funding, I might add. Only a Labor government is funding, of course, because we value those early childhood education and care workers. So I'm confident, based on the feedback that I've received from the sector, that where we've got to does provide confidence to employers that they can enter into those arrangements. As I say, if you're hearing to the contrary, I'd be happy to have a chat with you about that.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Tyrrell, second supplementary.
Family daycare and in-home care providers are not eligible for this worker retention payment. We are told that the government is working closely with these sectors to learn how best to support their workforce. Why aren't these providers involved in this scheme? And when will the 7,000 childcare services that aren't eligible for this scheme be protected with similar wage increases?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Tyrrell. As I've indicated, the government's focus to date has been on long daycare centres, on after-school, outside of school hours care centres. That's our focus up until now. I did hear, I think it was Senator McKenzie, say that it was a good question that you asked. It's interesting coming from a member of the opposition because, of course, they did nothing about early childhood wages for the 10 years they were in government. They did nothing about the spiralling cost of childcare for Australian families they were in government. So, as usual with Senator McKenzie, they're very wise when they're in opposition. They're just not very good when they're in government.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Tyrrell.
Thank you. I understand why. I'd just like to redirect as to, are they going to be included at some point,
Is it a point of order, Senator
Yeah,
Tyrrell?
apologies. Point of order.
Senator Watt, I will direct you back to the question. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Tyrrell. Look, we will obviously give these kind of things consideration going forward, but our focus has been to date on the long day care sector and the outside of school hours care sector. There may be other sectors that I've forgotten, but that's been the primary focus. But we'll give these kind of things consideration going forward, and again, happy to discuss those matters with you.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McKenzie.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, will the Albanese Labor government ever allow Australians to access their superannuation to invest in housing?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Minister.
Thank you. Well, that isn't part of our housing agenda. It hasn't been. We have been, and it's not part of our super agenda, I should say that. We're about strengthening superannuation, making sure that the superannuation guarantee has continued to increase, and also paying super on PPL, making sure that women who have taken time out of the workforce to care for children and receiving PPL get superannuation paid on that. That has been our focus. Of course, we've got the high balance superannuation changes we'd like to get through the Senate as well. I'm giving you an outline of our superannuation policy. And our housing policies, some of which are stuck in this place, are all about increasing the supply of housing and using government's investment to generate that additional supply of housing, whether it be through infrastructure, working with states and territories, building the workforce with our fee-free TAFE, which I note you were also opposed to. Hard to believe that there's a major political party in this country that would be opposed to fee-free TAFE when we've got skill shortages and additional investments in rent assistance, the Housing Australia Future Fund and the Social Housing Accelerator. Going very well, thank you, Senator Bragg. Very well indeed.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Mackenzie, first supplementary.
Minister, why is it appropriate for the Treasurer to raid the Future Fund as he sees fit on projects that suit Labor's political agenda with money that doesn't belong to him, but Australians are not entitled to access as part of their superannuation money that does belong to them in order to secure a home?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Gallagher.
I can go through all the reasons why we don't support super for housing, but I can also quote others who would say, including economists who would say that it would be one of the worst public policy decisions of the 21st century if we were to allow super to be rated for housing. And I don't think you're across the announcement that we made today about the Future Fund, where we actually deferred drawdowns till the 32-33 year, providing certainty to the Future Fund. So your imputation that there is a raiding of the Future Fund, it's the opposite. We are actually deferring any drawdown of the Future Fund, and we are simply saying to the Future Fund, consider, we haven't changed the rate of return, we haven't changed the risk profile, so none of that changes. Absolutely none. We've simply said consider housing, energy transition and infrastructure resilience. Hardly
Thank you, Minister.
things that I wouldn't imagine this chamber would support.
Senator Mackenzie, second supplementary.
Minister, can you categorically rule out mandating superannuation funds to invest in government priorities, just like you are with the Future Fund?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Gallagher.
Well, there is existing regulatory arrangement around how superannuation funds operate. There have been no changes to that in the announcement today. The announcement today was simply about adding, and this is it really is the hysteria from those opposite about saying that the Future Fund Board of Guardians, if they are contemplating investments, mindful of rates of return and risk as being the main priority, that you should look at housing, economic infrastructure, resilience, security and the energy transition is hardly world-stopping news.
Minister Gallagher, please resume. Senator Mackenzie, there's no need to call out point of order, so I can see you standing there. Senator Mackenzie.
Sorry, I should have said that through the chair. On relevance, the minister hasn't ruled out changing the regulatory environment. No, she didn't.
Senator Mackenzie, you're now getting into a debating point, and the minister began the answer to her question addressing your question specifically. Minister Gallagher.
I answered the question. There are no changes to the way superannuation funds are regulated in this country.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Financial Services, Senator Gallagher. Minister, Australians opening insurance renewals have been falling off their chairs. Brendan O'Malley from the Courier Mail reported in September that a homeowner on Cheviot Street in Brisbane had their insurance bill increased from $3,000 to $32,000 a year, more than 10 times. Queensland Suncorp Bank profited $379 million last year, while Suncorp Bank's insurance division made a whopping $1.2 billion profit, more than triple their banking business. Why is your government letting insurance companies rob Queenslanders?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Gallagher.
Well, I don't accept the proposition that Senator Roberts has put as part of his question, but I do accept and understand that insurance affordability is a real issue for Australian households and business, and it is something that the government is concerned about. You see it in the inflation data that one of the big drivers of inflation is around costs around insurance. There are a number of reasons why insurance premiums have increased in the last 12 months. Due to a range of factors, but I think Senator McAllister was talking about this earlier in the week, more frequent and more intense hazard events, price inflation making it more expensive to repair damages, and the global distribution of risk by reinsurers, which are having to cover costs of earthquakes in New Zealand, hurricanes in Florida. That all has an impact on costs here. The government has established an insurance affordability and national hazard risk reduction task force within the Department of PM&C to address the impacts of climate change and inflationary pressures that are driving up the cost of insurance. So this is something that we are looking at what further steps the government can take, working with industry stakeholders through the task force to look at what steps can further be taken, including, I know the insurers always raise this with me, which is risk mitigation, land use planning, as well as other near-term opportunities to address affordability.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Roberts, first supplementary.
Thank you. That insurance bill that I talked about before went up because Brisbane City Council published new climate scaremongering flood maps. The street never had a problem with flooding, yet was included in a new zone marked as a 1 in 2,000-year climate change doomsday flood. Minister, why are you letting insurance companies use baseless climate change scaremongering as an excuse to gouge billions at the expense of Queenslanders?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, as I said in my previous answer, there are a range of drivers impacting on the cost of insurance. Some of it is around local hazardous events that we've had, including floods in Brisbane and other areas of Queensland. But there are other reasons like price inflation and like the reinsurance market, which is being affected by those big global natural disasters that we've been seeing. And some would say, and I would say, at the caused by climate change. I accept that you might not agree with that. In relation to land use planning, look, that has been subject to a number of inquiries and reviews post the flooding, particularly in areas like Brisbane, and land use planning zoning maps have changed to reflect some of the risk associated with that, and that would feed into premiums, not just in Queensland though, but around the country.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Roberts, second supplementary.
Thank you. Foreign insurance companies own these insurance companies in Australia. Foreign multinational global wealth funds and corporates like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street and Goldman Sachs are their largest and controlling shareholders. Insurance is expensive and the money goes overseas. Minister, why aren't you doing anything to stop these insurance companies gouging Queenslanders and sending the profits overseas to multinational global investors?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Gallagher.
Well, certainly I've already alluded to the fact that the global distribution of risk by reinsurers, and that you talk about them, the global reinsurers, affects the price of insurance here, as it does in other countries around the world. But I do not accept that we are not taking any action. We have established this task force to look at what further steps, what we can do to build on existing work, including areas like risk mitigation and land use planning, as well as other steps to increase or deal with some of these affordability challenges. And this is a challenge not just in Queensland but around the country.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Payman.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Special Minister of State, Minister Farrell. The proposed electoral donation reform bill contains some good measures, such as the lowering of the disclosure threshold. However, it's obvious that this is a major party conspiracy to remove choice and diversity for the voters. Constitutional lawyer and Professor Emerita at the University of Sydney, Dr. Anne Toomey, has noted that an independent candidate with no infrastructure under this system would only be able to receive a maximum of $20,000 per donor per year, making it difficult to get elected, while a major party that has branches in the 8 states and territories, a federal branch, associated entities could, over a 3-year election cycle, receive as much as $2.56 million from a single donor. Minister, how can this be described as anything but a cynical attack on the diversity of the political landscape?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Payman for her question. And I don't believe you have accurately described the legislation that we have introduced into this parliament. When you were a member of the Labor Party, which wasn't all that long ago, you took to the people of Western Australia a number of things. You took to the people of Western Australia that we needed to lower the disclosure records for donations. We've done that in this legislation. You took to the people of Western Australia, the people that elected you, the proposition that there would be real-time disclosure, so that every donation that anybody made to any candidate running in an election, you could tell before you voted for that person who else was backing that candidate. You took to the people of Western Australia the proposition that we needed to cap donations, and we've done that. We've capped donations, not in the way you've just described. You haven't accurately, I think, understood the legislation that you took to the, or the proposal that you took to the people at the last election. But we have capped the amount of money that people can donate, and we've done it equally for everybody. This is levelling the playing field. This is levelling the.
Thank you, Minister. The time has expired. Senator Payman, first supplementary.
Please stop misleading the Australians, Minister. The ABC reported on 14th November that the increase of the election funding rate to $5 per vote would net the major parties nearly $20 million based on last election's primary votes. Minister, are these reforms tackling big money, or is this just the redistribution of electoral wealth in favour of the major parties that fences off the playing field more than it does level it?
Senator Payman, technically this level of detail about a bill before the parliament is out of order, but I will invite the minister to answer in whatever way he wishes. Thank you.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Payman for her first supplementary question. I didn't quite get through all of the other things that you supported going into the last election. The other point I should have made, if I had been a little bit quicker, was, of course, that you supported a cap on expenditure. Now that cap is $800,000. Now you can't tell me, and I bet you there's nobody in the audience here today who couldn't get their message across to the community in an election by spending $800,000. Now.
Senator Canavan.
Yeah, give me a break. Now, there is a price to pay if you want democracy to work in this country.
Thank you, Minister. Time. Senator Payman, second Order. Senator Payman, I haven't called you. Senator Payman, second supplementary.
Maybe I should stop expecting answers here. Minister, can you explain to Australians why a bill like this can be rushed through without an inquiry or scrutiny, but the ALP's promised HECS relief has to wait until the next election?
Minister Farrell.
Senator Payman, again, you say this is being rushed through the parliament. You took
Order.
everything. You took everything that's in this legislation to the people of Western Australia 2.5 years ago. This legislation is not a surprise to anybody. The only people in this chamber that are seeking to block this legislation are the people who are backed by the billionaires. Now, I say we need an electoral system in this country that allows ordinary people like these people here, like these people around here, to participate, and even some of these people over here, even some of them, to participate in the. We do not want.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Cash.
Thank you very much. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Wong. Minister, all Australians were disturbed to learn of a series of anti-Israel vandalism attacks in the Sydney suburb of Woollahra overnight. Last week, you and your government supported a UN resolution recognising Palestinian sovereignty, a change of Australia's long-standing position on Israel and a position out of line with our most important ally, the United States. Minister, do you accept that your government's shifting position on Israel emboldens anti-Israel elements within the Australian community to conduct such anti-Israel vandalism?
Minister Wong. Order.
Thank you, President. I want to make clear I unequivocally condemn what we saw last night in Sydney. Unequivocally condemn it. The intimidation, violence, pardon me. Excuse me. The intimidation, violence, destruction of property is unacceptable. It's unacceptable in this country. And we know that these actions are designed to incite fear, create fear, and they cannot be tolerated. I say again, there is no place, as I've said many times, there is no place for anti-Semitism in this country. I have always stood against anti-Semitism. I have always stood against prejudice, and I always stand for a country in which the diversity of the Australian community are and feel safe. Now I'm asked about a separate issue. Which is why we voted the way we did in the fourth committee vote at the UN General Assembly. We use our vote in the UN system to progress, do what we can to work with others to progress the cause of peace. The vote is consistent with the priority we place on building momentum towards a two-state solution, which previously had bipartisan support.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Cash, first supplementary.
Minister, did DFAT or Australia's UN mission recommend that Australia maintain a position of abstain on the UN resolution regarding permanent sovereignty of the Palestinian people? Why did you overturn their recommendation?
Minister Wong.
As I said in the answer to the first question, the vote is consistent with the priority the Albanese government places on building momentum towards a two-state solution. I know that those opposite have not taken the same view, neither have the Greens. But we do believe, as do the majority of the international
Minister
community—
Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
It's a point of order in relation to relevance. The question was specific in relation to the DFAT or Australia's UN mission recommendation to the Albanese government, and did you overturn that recommendation?
Thank you, Senator Cash. The minister is being relevant. Senator McKenzie, I have called for order. Your constant interjections are disrespectful and, quite frankly, really annoying. So either listen in silence or leave the chamber. Minister Wong, please continue.
The vote in favour of this resolution by Australia was alongside more than 155 members of the international community, including the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Japan and New Zealand.
Order. 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 Minister Wong, had you finished your question? Senator Cash, second supplementary.
Minister, will you admit that your government's constant changing of Australia's long-standing position on Israel has left Australian Jewish community members much less safe and secure than they were prior to October 7 last year?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
We will always stand against anti-Semitism, and we always have.
Senator O'Neill.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Education, Senator Watt. Education is one of our proudest national assets, and Australians expect governments to safeguard it. Unfortunately, shonks and crooks seeking to exploit international students have been undermining the quality and the integrity of our system. How is the Albanese Labor government improving the integrity of the education sector while increasing accessibility for Australians? And why are these reforms so important?
Senator Watt.
Well, thank you very much, Senator O'Neill, for a very important question to end the week on, because Australia's education system is the envy of the rest of the world. But that doesn't mean that we can't improve it, so it continues to deliver for students and for our country. And that's why the Albanese government has taken the responsible step to return the number of international students to a sustainable level and to bring integrity back to our tertiary education sector. Now, all week, Australians have been scratching their heads about why Peter Dutton and the Liberal Party have recklessly reversed their support for international student caps while cracking down on the shonks and crooks who feed our international education system. Well, this morning we got our answer, and it's sitting right around there. A story in the Nine newspapers titled "Senior Liberal Headlines Event for Student Visa Agents Before Tanking Migration Bill" lifted the lid on the real reason the Coalition has reversed its position. The article states Coalition frontbencher Sarah Henderson, hello Sarah, headlined an event for migration agents and private colleges and launched a new brand for a Liberal Party member who helps international students extend stays in Australia just a month before dumping Labor's bill to crack down on the private education sector. Well. Senator Henderson can now add brand ambassador to her long list of careers. The article goes on. Henderson, who leads the opposition's education policy, spoke at the private forum attended by dozens of agents, some of whom have had restrictions imposed on them by the tertiary education regulator or helped international students appeal their visa rejections. And then the kicker. Some of the companies are also Liberal Party donors. And there you have it. Senator Henderson and Mr Dutton have recklessly changed their position on this bill to appease a few dodgy donors.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator O'Neill, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for that answer. We do know that education plays a crucial role in getting people into well-paid, secure jobs. Now, I note that Mr Dutton and the Liberals have described free TAFE as wasteful spending and student debt as profoundly unfair. Why is the Albanese Labor government making TAFE and university more affordable for students, and what challenges to this cost of living support faces so far?
Order. Senator Henderson, order. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Well, we know Australians are under the pump at the moment, and that's why the Albanese Labor government are delivering cost of living relief. It's why Labor is making TAFE courses free, opposed by the opposition, and reducing the burden on students, opposed by the opposition. But an arrogant Mr Dutton and his team call this wasteful spending and say TAFE students don't value their free courses. And they arrogantly think they can say one thing and do another. Because it wasn't very long ago that Mr Dutton called international students the modern version of boat arrivals. And as recently as 2 months ago, Deputy Liberal leader Susan Lee and Senator Henderson, there she is again, said the Coalition has maintained the importance of a cap on international students. But all it took was one event with Liberal Party donors, including shonky education agents, to see their principles collapse. recklessly stopping this government from capping international student numbers to assist with migration levels, while also cracking down on the shonky agents who, it turns out, are Liberal Party donors.
Minister. Senator O'Neill, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. And I know that you understand all Australians are feeling the pinch of cost of living pressures. I know that Mr Dutton and the Liberal and Nationals believe if you don't pay for something, you don't value it. How are the Albanese Labor government's education reforms helping to ease cost of living pressure for Australians? And what are the key barriers to delivering these very important reforms?
Order. Order. Senator Watt, and please I remind you to address your remarks to the chair.
Thank you, President. The Albanese government's free, TAFE and student debt relief policies are helping Australians with cost of living pressures. But just as he opposed all our cost of living relief, Mr Dutton has opposed this relief too. And that's because what we learned this week is that Mr Dutton and the coalition believe that only those who pay for something appreciate the value of it. I'll tell you who else appreciates the value of what they pay for: those shonky migration and education agents who sank Labor's student caps. They know the value of that, and that's why they are prepared to pay the Liberal Party for it. Now, what else is Mr Dutton willing to recklessly change his position on if the price is right? Will a big tech fundraiser change his position on social media age limits? We know Senator Antic wants that. Will a Stuart Robert fundraiser change his position on government IT procurement? Oh, hang on, that already happened.
Minister Watt. Senator Henderson.
A point of order on imputing motive against me. Senator Watt is falsely claiming that I attended a fundraiser.
Point. That is a debating point. Please resume your seat. Senator Henderson. Senator Henderson. I reminded you last week when I called you to order and I asked you to resume your seat to do so. I did that today and you ignored me for 2 times. When I call you to order and ask you to resume your seat, please do so. There is not a point of order. Senator McGrath, I called you a number of times during that question. I'm going to ask you to listen to the remaining few seconds in silence. Minister Watt.
The fact is that a reckless and arrogant Peter Dutton opposed every single cost of living measure this government has proposed, and if he's elected Prime Minister, things will get worse for every single Australian except those Liberal Party donors.
Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.